right, perfect. Hey, welcome back. This is our Halloween spooky month. Convince Kyle to step into the horror genre for a minute.
Yeah, it's a losing battle between Godzilla and your need for horror movies. Every time I turn around, I'm being asked to do something else.
That's not history.
Next,
Not
you're going to
really
be like,
history.
hear me out. Coyote Ugly. Go.
Let's do it. Let's do
Based
it.
on the real bar.
There we go. We have a guest today. This is Jason from Dads from the Crypt, aka the podcast with the greatest intro music you're gonna hear. It's incredible. I love it. I was listening to an episode. It said it's done by a guy, Hi-Fi. Is that right?
Yeah, so not to make a long story short, or however you say it, but I met my co-host through the Bloody Good Horror podcast.
There you go.
Through their Slack community during COVID. We all started doing trivia on Saturday nights, and that was like our social interaction for the week.
Nice.
Outside of our immediate families. And the main host of that is a guy named Eric Knoll, and he has a side project doing music, and he actually just released a new album called Ghosts. You can find it on Spotify or anywhere else under Hi-Fi. I think it's HY-FY.
Perfect. Okay.
And we asked him, so we got a cameo from John Kassir, who does the voice of the Crypt Keeper. For those that don't know, we started off as a Tales from the Crypt podcast with three dads from the Crypt. And we've actually finished the series, so now we're kind of doing a lot of other things. But we're all kind of like Tales from the Crypt from the heart. So when we first started, we got a cameo from John Kassir doing a couple lines for us, and Eric took that and kind of made our little intro. And what's funny is we recently changed platforms to StreamYard, and there you can actually play your intro live. So it like gets me even more hyped to do the episode, to hear the music. And it's funny because like it's playing, it's not recording anyone else, but you can still see each other, and like we're all just kind of like nodding our heads and bouncing around a little bit.
Well, that's awesome. I just add mine in. I add ours in like in post. So.
Yeah, no, that's what I did like for many years. But
right. There we go. All right. Well, welcome to the show, man. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited to get spooky.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about a horror movie because that's my big thing. I love
spooky
horror.
and sexy.
There you go.
Oh my god, spooky and
As
horny.
it turns out, yes.
So
sporny,
Kyle,
if you will.
Sporny.
Sporny.
Hooky.
Hooky. Nah, man. No.
No, I don't like hooky.
No.
All right, Kyle, what are we talking about today?
Oh, we are talking about, I would say drum roll, but all I have is an office desk. So we are talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 1992 film. And
Yes.
if there's a famous actor from the 90s in it that could completely derail a film with their diva fit, they are in this movie. I don't know if they threw a diva fit, but it's all the suspects. It's Carrie Elwes, Anthony Hopkins, Winona Ryder. Everybody's here.
Everybody's here.
Gary Oldman.
With Anthony Hopkins fresh off his Oscar for Silence of the Lambs.
Right.
Thinking to himself, I don't want to have to act. What movie can I make a lot of money in and not really have to show up? Hi. Hey. Hello.
Hello. There's so many things with his character that we'll get into, because it's like, is he supernatural? Does he have a vendetta against Dracula?
Is he just a drunken German? We don't know.
We don't know. Okay, so yeah, 1992, winner of 3 Oscars. Best costume design, best sound effects, best makeup. Grossed $215 million on a $40 million budget.
Wow.
Still not a top 10 box office movie for 1992, but you know what it beat?
Really?
You know what it beat, Kyle?
If you're about to say Last of the Mohicans, I'm going to come through the camera.
It beat Last of the
I hate
Mohicans.
you so much.
Jason, there's a little inside joke here. Kyle loves Last of the Mohicans, and I did not. So I don't know which side of the fence you stand on, but
Don't
I've never seen that one.
Don't sell yourself that easily, Dustin. Dustin actively dislikes Last of the Mohicans, and he's the only human I've talked to who does, and that is why it's funny. It's not that he doesn't love it. It's I polled everybody I know, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's a good movie." And I'm like, well, tell Dustin that, man.
I feel like it's one of those movies that, like, yeah, of course I like it. People say that I've never seen it before because they don't want to feel racist or something.
right.
Ooh, true. Yes, there is that. Dustin is not afraid to feel racist, as we've discovered.
As we've discovered, I feel like I'm pretty outspoken. I have a good heart, and I stand by it. All right.
And if we use a slur for Germans, then so be it. You know?
Hey, we were talking about Nazis. It's okay. We're not talking about modern day Germans.
That's a Normandy he's willing to die on, apparently.
Back to the movie here. Okay, so yeah, we talked about the cast here. We have Gary Oldman playing Dracula.
Hold on.
Yeah.
You know what did beat this movie that you guys should probably do?
What's that?
Sister Act.
Sister Act? I don't think I've ever. Actually, there's actually a very good chance that very young me did see Sister Act.
Oh, it's so good.
There's a good chance. I had my grandmother loves that like type of movie of everything's positive with a little bit of religion thrown in there.
Nuns on the Run.
Yeah,
Nuns on the Run.
There's a very good chance I've actually seen that. I don't remember anything about it. So we've got Gary Oldman playing Dracula. He's kind of a rising star at the time. He had just done JFK. He played Lee Harvey Oswald the year prior. We're going to get to that movie later this season.
Oof,
you have Winona Ryder playing a double duty here. Mina and Elizabeth. Kyle, help me out here.
She's not a real person, man. You're on your own.
Elizabeth. I don't know. I don't even know if they probably say her name, but it's just Elizabeth, but without the H and now add an A.
The accents in this movie are so all over the place. You can pronounce it however you want.
Keanue Reeves and his English accent is a trip.
So she had done Heathers, Beetlejuice, and Edward Scissorhands prior. Anthony Hopkins, we already talked about, played Van Helsing. Famously starred in probably his most famous role, Silence of the Lambs, 1991. Won an Oscar for it. This is released in 1992. Do you know how many roles Anthony Hopkins did between his Oscar-winning role the year prior and this movie?
I know. You told me. Jason, do you know?
Jason, do you know?
Not that, man. I know how many roles he did in this movie. He plays like everyone.
He played
like,
18...
I want like an AI cut this movie where he plays every character.
Yes.
So Anthony Hopkins has 5 IMDb credits between 2 films in a year. And I hadn't heard of 0 of them. They're like TV movies and stuff. So
yeah,
Anthony Hopkins, a little bit of that Danny Trejo just doesn't turn a roll down, I guess.
I wonder if like some of them were already in the can and they just were like on the shelf. And then once he won this Oscar, they were like, okay, let's just slap his name on this.
Yeah,
and
like a Cabin in the Woods, Chris Hemsworth situation.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
All right. Sadie Frost playing Lucy. She didn't do a lot, but she did make her directorial debut in 2021. I wanted to point that out. Almost 30 years later, she's still rocking it. So,
what was it?
It's a documentary film movie about a artist. Gosh dang it, it's just a single word. I'd have to look it up again. And then there's this no-name guy, Keanue Reeves. He'd done like a Bill and Ted's movie. He'd done Point Break. It's
I heard he broke
surfing.
A point at some point. Like,
he's like surfing with a bunch of other guys.
With the guy from Roadhouse. That's that's who they should have had in this movie.
Dude. Yeah. So
oh my
anyway,
god!
I don't really think he. I don't think he did much.
Man. I think he'd have to play the American, right? Which is the token American. It's just Patrick Swayze.
Patrick Swayze in the Dracula role.
Okay.
That might be too sexy.
Patrick Swayze as Vlad Dracula in the first 5 minutes of the movie, and then just shamelessly trading him out for Gary Oldman with absolutely no explanation.
There is a documentary. It's called Blood is the Life. It's about the making of this film. It was included on the VHS copies for home release after the credits ended, and apparently it was not mentioned on the box at all. So people didn't really know about it unless you like stayed for after the credits. And so it kind of went like unknown for a long time. The pre-production rehearsals that took place in Napa Valley are covered. The experiences that are described give some insight into this absurd acting found in this movie, including the actors pantomiming, and throwing sounds at one another, which is literally like huge. All the main actors, all the main characters in here, these big names, standing in a large circle, making a noise, and then making a throwing motion. And then the next big name actor has to make that noise and then make a different noise and throw it. It's the strangest thing. I really
need one of those noises to have been a rubber chicken. Like, I just need Keanu Reeves to have thrown a rubber chicken noise at Carrie Elwes. Like, I'm pretty sure he did. My existence. Don't tempt me. Don't tease me.
Anthony Hopkins described the experience of shooting this as wobbly, saying you never knew what scenes were going to be filmed each day because pages of the script were frequently removed or added.
Like, I think because this is Francis Ford Coppola,
mhm.
and you've got like the cream of the crop of Hollywood guys, they're like, it's almost like a nexus kind of event where they're like, we're going to do the most actory thing possible, the most Hollywood stuff. Like, we're going to go to Francis Ford Coppola's vineyard in Napa and just be actors.
Yeah, just the most chaotic shoot, but like surprisingly, there's no, at least as far as I know, other than Gary Oldman being kind of frustrated, there's no like drama that went on with the shoot.
Well, he like creeped out Winona Ryder when he was trying to be a little too method.
There's a couple and then apparently, a couple like the creeping out, and then when Lucy or Sadie Frost is dressed up as a vampire, the little child that she's carrying apparently freaked and had no idea that they were going to have to do it multiple takes. So like they had a really hard time getting a second take with that kid. But I mean, you have all these names and you expect, bigger issues to arise, especially with the way that this was shot, but apparently not. Apparently it went pretty well.
Sometimes everybody just likes being in the show. Like once in a while, everybody's like, yeah, I enjoy this.
Yeah.
Like I signed up for this. This is fine.
In addition to this, Francis Ford Coppola had the main cast members read the entirety of the novel Dracula out loud, which took it took the entirety of 2 days. It's a long novel. Yeah. Have either of you read the novel for Dracula?
Like in middle school or sometime early high school, I feel like I did it, and it's really, at least at the time, I thought it was really boring because of the format.
It's so slow.
I read like a preteen translation of it, to where instead of being in letter format, it's like if you read like a modernized Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of thing. However, I do have historical notes on the book that back up why this movie is such a cluster sex grenade.
There you go.
This movie is a beautiful disaster. That's all. That's my...
Yes. But there is historical precedence as to why everybody is so horny, as it turns out, that we'll get to later.
That we'll get to very shortly.
Very shortly. As short as Keanue Reeves' English accent.
Hey. So based on the novel by Bram Stoker, I always want to say Bram Stoker. It's not right. Bram Stoker. Written in 1897, famously was the first of the Universal monster movies in 1931. This is the Bela Lugosi version. We all at least have seen pieces of it. I thought it was interesting to think about. Nearly twice as much time passed between the Lugosi version and this remake compared to when the novel was released and when the 1931 movie came out. Because it's like 1897, so there's like 34 years, and then there's 61 years between the two movies.
What year did Nosferatu come out?
Nosferatu, I want to say, was 22. Nosferatu was made illegally, essentially. They did not have the rights from his estate to make the movie. And so at one point in time, it was ordered to be burned. And so it's kind of a miracle that we have Nosferatu at all.
Right.
And some would argue, even being a silent film, Nosferatu is still better than the original Dracula.
Well, okay, here's my take on the original Dracula.
Yeah.
Because a couple years ago, I did the whole deep dive on all the Universal monster movies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a particularly good movie outside of Bela Lugosi's performance.
Mm-hmm.
He is very, very good, but everything around him just isn't that good. They made a Mexican version of it simultaneously. So the American version filmed on the same sets during the day, and the Mexican version filmed at night. And it's that the Mexican version is actually a somewhat better movie. Minus Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, the Spanish version is very interesting. I've never watched it. I think I own it. I'm pretty sure it's on the same Blu-ray. I've just never actually watched it. But apparently, I guess like they watched the film, like the shots that they did before, and they're like, we could do better. And then they just made a better movie overall. So with this version, Jason, what was your first like time watching this? Do you remember?
Yeah, so I remember This came out in 92. So I was like 11 when this came out.
Okay.
I remember like the marketing and the hype kind of coming out around that. And it was like, as a 11-year-old, it terrified me. Like those
really?
shots of Dracula, like as the bat and stuff. I very distinctly remember seeing that, those shots and being really, really scared. I wasn't into like modern horror when I was a kid. I watched like Universal stuff, but this was like the edgy, like, scary stuff. But yeah, I definitely remember the trailers coming out, and being really terrified of those. I remember the video games coming out. I think I played like the Sega CD adaptation, like at Universal City or whatever it was, or Universal something Universe. That was like a store that you could play stuff in.
Oh, neat.
In certain regions, and it's now what Fry's Electronics, basically.
Oh crap. Okay.
The precursor to that. And then I think I saw it like in bits and pieces, like on like TNT as it popped up. And then once I got really into horror, then I started going back and watching all these kind of movies, and like, okay, now I see what's going on here, and yeah. And it's one I go to. It's kind of a comfort thing because it's just so much happening in every goddamn scene of this movie.
Yes,
It's like relentless, but
You cannot blink. Like you just, if you look away, you're like, it's gone. I've lost it. I don't know.
yeah. I'm a little obsessed in a way with the production of this movie, just like the costumes and the sets and all the camera trickery they're doing. Like it's just packed full of things to just notice.
It really is. I think the first time I watched it on TV. It was probably on like TNT or something like that. And I watched it on TV, so it's edited. There are parts of it that are cut out, which I really feel like takes away from this movie, especially this movie. I mean, it takes away from most of them that when you watch it edited. But yeah, I watched it the first time and it felt like a fever dream. I was like, what am I seeing? And so this is only the second time that I've watched it, and I will say,
oh wow,
I was like, this is much better than I remembered. But I've still got like, what's going on here?
Well, yeah, it's better. It's somehow better and worse than you remember.
Yeah.
This is the second time I've watched it, and the first time I watched it was last year. And I was watching it because I was like, this is it. This is the Winona Ryder Dracula. Like, this is what every Dracula nut from the 80s and 70s thinks is the great movie. I watched it and I was like, that was crap. Why does everybody like this movie? That was awful. Like, what the hell did I just watch? And then I watched it this time, and I was like, this is a movie that I have witnessed, and there's good parts to it, but this is maybe the moviest movie that I have ever watched movie. It is. I liked it. Like, I'll watch it again. Heck, I might watch it like tomorrow. But I was watching it and I thought this is one of those movies where it's greater than the sum of its parts, but I can't tell you how. Like, I would not be able to tell you how it is. It just is. You just have to believe us.
It's a peaks and valleys where like the things that are good are amazing and the things that are bad are glaring.
And there's probably objectively more that is amazing than glaring, but I think the glaring sticks with you more. Like, you don't remember the amazing. You walk away like, hey, I remember that one moment where that guy had a very Brooklyn accent in the middle of England.
Well, look at it like this, because there are so many things that are so good. If you go to a nice sit-down restaurant and you have like homemade pasta and you have like a fresh salad and you've got, I don't know, freshly baked bread, and then someone puts like chicken nuggets in the middle of your plate, you're gonna be like, everything's fantastic, but who put these microwave nuggets in the middle of my meal? That's kind of how this movie is.
But the main course, because usually you go to the movies for the acting and for the characters and for the plot, and those are the weakest part of this movie.
See, I thought it was more like when you go to a restaurant and the entree is okay. It's Olive Garden. The pasta is fine, but the salad, the breadsticks, and the soup are amazing. Like, this movie is Dracula Olive Garden. If you go specifically for the main dish, you're going to be vaguely disappointed. But if you go for all the frivolous stuff that you don't need but you want, you're going to have a really good time.
Hey, look, man, some of us didn't grow up with a lot of money. Olive Garden is fine dining, okay?
You know what? My kids think Olive Garden is the fanciest restaurant.
I thought my parents had me convinced. I don't think they ever actually said this, but in my mind, I thought Olive Garden was like the most expensive restaurant you could go to. until
Mine
like
was
I went.
McAllister's. Like mine was McAllister's, so I feel the
McAllister's
struggle.
might be the most expensive restaurant you can go to. All
Is
right.
that regional? I never heard that one.
Yeah,
Oh, you don't have McAllister's there?
No.
Oh wow. Like okay, so like make a sandwich, add an extra piece of toast to it, and then charge yourself $15. McAllister's right there.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, it's poor people Panera is what McAllister's is.
But
Got
more
it.
expensive somehow.
Yeah, somehow.
All right, let's get into this movie. Kyle, do you want to just take over for this little history portion right here at the beginning? And I will say, in a weird way, this may be my favorite part of the movie.
Yes.
I
Like if I was
love-
going to go on YouTube and look up like a clip of this movie, this is the one I'd look for because it's just again the production is just so amazing on this.
It's so good. It's so good. And why is his costume the way it is?
I
don't think it's
I
historical,
couldn't tell you.
but it looks awesome.
Nobody wears armor that looks like musculature that defeats the entire point armor. Anyway,
But
we
it looks like it's
opened.
like his veins and stuff are on the outside of his like
Yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe it's supposed to be scary, but if I'm a swordsman, I'm like, look at this idiot. Look at this giant buff idiot. Skin peeled off. So this cluster of a movie begins in 1460s Transylvania, which is called Romania now, but it's its own thing back in the day. It's actually this place called Wallachia or Wallachia, depending on how you want to pronounce it. It's effectively a buffer state between the Ottoman Empire and Hungary. I can go into detail on that a little later, but for the purposes of the movie, Vlad Dracula, leader of this kingdom, is opposing Ottoman invaders, and he wages an incredibly violent and victorious campaign against the enemy army, which is a thing that happened, and people did get impaled on stakes, like we see in the opening puppet scene. He returns to his castle to find that the Ottomans have tricked his wife into committing suicide. Angry at God and man and whatever idiot designed his armor, I'm sure, he rebels against everything, curses God, and sells his soul to the devil so that he may basically haunt humanity for the rest of his days. I don't know. His motivation for this is a little shaky. Like this is like a passion soul selling, and I'm fairly certain he woke up the next morning like having a butterfly tramp stamp. He was like, "Why did I do this? I can't get rid of this now. I'm just stuck with this forever."
I mean, but he was protecting God's land in his opinion. And then he feels like God betrayed him, which I think is interesting because in the opening scene, he's clutching a cross while he's surrounded by these like dying men. And then later the cross is like his weakness. So
it's also interesting because real life Vlad Dracula is like the least religious person you will ever meet in your entire life.
I mean, there's nothing like, protecting your life-loving God and killing every single person you can.
Yeah, that's right. God is damning you, and I'm the weapon, baby. Let's go.
I will send you to his judgment immediately.
No, actually, as the history buff, can you clarify something for me?
Sure.
So I recently saw, I think it was a TikTok or something I saw that said that Romania used to be called something else, and then the Romans obliterated it, and they wanted to stamp it out, so they named it after themselves.
Yeah, I think it's Dacia is what it's called. And
like that's a power move.
Yeah, the Romans do that a lot. The reason that North Africa is kind of a cropless wasteland is because the Romans salted like 300 miles of coastline when they took down this city state called Carthage in the Punic Wars, and they were so pissy that they had to fight them 3 times that they killed all of the specific species of elephant that they used as war elephants. They killed the specific species of lion that didn't bother the Romans. It just lived there. They salted all of the ground, and they tore every city with more than a couple hundred people in it, like to the foundation stones.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Romans be crazy.
That's such a, I'm saying it's such a power move. We're going to rename, so no one will ever remember your name of your country.
Yeah. And in the context of the 1460s, it's an important area because Constantinople falls to the Ottomans in 1453, and they spread like wildfire through the Balkans because nobody controls the Balkans. Because it used to be the Byzantine Empire, but the Byzantine Empire had become only the city of Constantinople like 40 years before it fell. So it's not like a lawless wasteland, but it's one of those lots of different people think they control different snippets of it. And they get a certain length into it. And this amazing warrior general king, not a good dude, but an amazing leader named John Hyundai, throws them back twice. And he basically establishes a buffer state called Wallachia And Vlad Dracula's family are the Voivodes, so the dukes of Wallachia, and their allegiance shifts back and forth as to who holds more power in any given decade. Yeah, it's very complicated and messy, and they all hate the crap out of each other.
Now, what about the Order of the Dracula, or not the Order of the Dragon? I think.
Yeah, so the Order of the Dragon is it's a westernized version of the name Dracula. So Vlad is not Dracula. Vlad is Vlad III. Vlad III's father, Vlad II, is known as Vlad Dracula or Vlad the Dragon, Vlad of the Dragon, Vlad of the Devil, whatever. It's ironic because he's maybe the least violent of the three Vlads that rule Wallachia. And the reason Vlad Dracula is because in medieval Romanian, I suppose, whatever language that actually was, A is son of. So this Vlad Dracula, is Vlad, son of the dragon.
So he didn't like have bad breath or something.
Yeah, I don't know. He did maybe have a medical condition that made him bleed when he cried, though. So
now that would be intimidating.
That's kind of badass. You shove post up people's butts, and then you cry tears of blood when you watch your people get slaughtered.
Mads Mikkelsen in the Bond movie,
right?
Dude was a riot.
So let's go ahead and address this here. There is a why this appears at the beginning of this movie, and then has nothing to do with Vlad, like historically, is because there's this long-standing belief that Vlad the Impaler was like this very much inspiration for Dracula. Not 100% true, and Kyle, you may be able to explain this a little bit better, but I do have a little quote here from his, I want to say his Bram Stoker's son, and he had told him that the idea of Dracula came to him in a nightmarish dream after eating too much dressed crab. So I thought that was interesting. Anyways, Kyle, do you have a little bit of an explanation here before we go on to London?
Yeah, I do. Actually, tell you what, to fully explain that explanation, I'm just going to give a brief, 2-minute summary of actual Vlad Dracula, the man, the myth, the Impaler.
Oh, no. History in our history.
History in our history according to Hollywood podcast. It's the worst. Yeah. So basically, what it is that Vlad is dethroned by Hungary, which is this wildly powerful European kingdom at the time, arguably the most powerful, and they are the direct enemies of the Ottoman Empire. They protect Christian Europe from the Muslim menace or whatever they think they're doing back then in the 1450s. He's thrown out because he was raised in the Ottoman Empire as a hostage soldier because his father pissed off the Ottomans, and so they demanded Vlad and his younger brother Radu as tribute. They're trained in warfare by the Janissaries. Vlad actually doesn't like, but is nominally close to the upcoming Sultan who conquers Constantinople, Mehmed II. Fascinating. And long story short, eventually Vlad convinces Hungary that he should rule this buffer state because he too dislikes the Ottomans. They put him in power. He opposes Mehmed II, who is inarguably the most powerful man on the face of the planet at this time, at least in Europe, in the European Western world. He's the most powerful leader. He just conquered Constantinople, for God's sake. The dude's unstoppable. He pisses him off, he kills 2 envoys, and then he sends their heads back to the Ottoman Empire, or he impales them. We're not entirely sure which. Maybe both. He launches a massive guerrilla war after he invades the Ottoman Empire and just genocides 20,000 people to make a point. Wow. To make a point about how much he hates the Ottomans. He launches this long-ass guerrilla war in which the Ottomans claim that he impales his own people. We have no proof of that. What we do have proof of is before he launches his war against the Ottomans to consolidate power from his cousin, who the Hungarians originally put in his place, he attacks the German population, the Saxon population of his home turf, and he obliterates them, and he leaves their bodies on stakes everywhere.
So that's kind of our shot that we did at the beginning. Yeah,
to show that you don't defy me. I'm sure he did that to the Ottomans. It's one of those, we don't know that he did, but we know he did. Because why would you only do it once, Eventually, he's kind of losing.
He can't stop.
There's no going back.
There's no going back. It's a gateway impaler. But so he keeps fighting. He goes to the new king of Hungary, Matthias Corvinus, and he's like, hey, if you give me he does the Churchill, if you give me the tools, I'll finish the job. And Corvinus goes, screw you, dude. I don't want to war with that crazy bastard. He took Romans. Like, he took the city of Rome, Constantinople. I'm not touching it. And he throws Vlad in jail for like 11 years. He eventually gets Vlad back out of jail to rule, Wallachia one more time. And within 2 years, our good old Impaler has died in combat with the Ottomans. So the reason this is all important is because during his time in jail, the monks under Matthias Corvinus, however you want to pronounce it, Hungarian dude, literally made up stories of Vlad's cruelty to justify why he's in prison. Because the thing that we have to remember is that by modern standards, Vlad is a genocidal maniac. However, by modern standards, pretty much every well-known commander up to a certain point in history, pre-1700 probably, is a genocidal maniac. That's how they waged war. It's not okay. It's not cool. Nobody liked it. It's what they did. So other than impaling people on sticks, just the act of mass killing is not unheard of by any means. It's not even unexpected. God knows how many people died when the Ottoman army took Constantinople, like, just is what it is. So it's this myth that is born in his time and then carried over after he dies for centuries, that he's this bloodthirsty tyrant. He's one of those background people by 1897 that you're not entirely sure where you've heard of this guy, but he's bad news. He's the Attila the Hun of that era, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, like Germany.
Right.
Where, somebody like Bram Stoker, you might have. So
it grows again.
Yeah, and so he probably, when he was doing that and he read the book and he had the dream, it was probably just a confluence of, I need preferably a real-ish person and a real sounding name, because his original name was, I think, like Count Vampire with or Wampire or something, good. Like just something stupid.
How would you spell that?
And it's like how the name Attila means something to us, even though it's just a name. It's the same thing. So when he reads that book, something strikes in his social memory, and he's like, yes, the Impaler of Men. Congrats, you're a vampire now.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're going to be in London, 1897. We're fast forwarding a few centuries here. We meet Renfield, who's gone insane after his trip to Transylvania.
Bro, me too.
And
I went insane after this trip through Transylvania too.
And Keanue Reeves with this very wonderful and definitely believable accent.
It was not excellent.
Totally bogus.
Totally bogus accent here.
Party on, dudes.
Almost as bad as his wig later on.
Ooh.
His soon-to-be wife, Winona Ryder, also played Elizabetta in the opening scene. Similarities here to The Mummy. I'm seeing some similarities here. This love that Dracula has for Mina, not really as a bit of a part of the story, or I don't even know if it really is included in the novel version.
No, it's all the movie.
It's all this movie, yeah. So I kind of feel like they copied The Mummy a little bit, but anyways, moving on here. There is a beautiful shot of Jonathan, which is Keanu Reeves' character, riding the train with a red sky and Dracula's blue eyes suddenly appearing on the horizon. And just like in the original, Dracula retrieves Jonathan in a stagecoach. Unlike in the original, he extends his arm an impossible distance, and Jonathan just kind of floats into the carriage. So we have floating blue flame as he enters the castle. And where are we? What are we thinking right now? What are we thinking when we watch this movie? Because here's where I'm like, huh.
Yeah. Out of the context, this stuff is like bonkers. There's I read up there's a whole mythology about on specific nights of the year, if there's a treasure hidden somewhere, it's supposed to be shown by a blue flame. I think that's actually part of the book. But probably one of my favorite things about this movie is just how all these in-camera tricks,
right?
Where where they show the hand reaching out, but it's really an impossible length, but really they actually had the seat move with the camera in proportion, kind of like in The Hobbit, where they have real actors of this different of the same height look small compared to each other because of forced perspective. All those old school camera tricks. And just especially when we get to the castle, how his shadow has a whole life of its own. All that stuff is just so much fun.
So there's a quote from Francis Ford Coppola he said, "I felt like in the presence of vampires, physics just don't apply the same." And I was like, that would have been a great thing to explain early on and then show us, not just show us and let us figure it out. But I loved that the shadows did not match. I thought that was really interesting. And especially like when he turns away and Jonathan insults him without meaning to, just ignorantly, and the shadow like turns and like tries to choke him. I was like, some of these are pretty creative. I really like some of the cinematography here.
I got to tell you, my investment in this Francis Ford Coppola's project of how to make a scary vampire ended before I even met Dracula, because whatever that bird-beaked scale metal wearing freak that drives the stagecoach is, like, that's my sleep paralysis demon, dude. Like, there was an actual human driving that stagecoach at one point, and then good old Point Break, like sticks his head out and looks up. And let me tell you, Bill and Ted, that driver's not excellent. He's scary as crap. It's like some sort of horse wrangling demon. And then I just didn't care. Past that, I'm like, okay, all right, this is where we're at. We're at like giant bird beaked crazy people driving horses. Cool. Everything goes in this castle.
Yeah, so I also like that there are like 10 or 12 different manifestations of Dracula in this, because it's Dracula driving the stagecoach. Like, and that's from the original movie as well. But yeah, he definitely takes a lot of forms in this.
I also like that it's a place that you can actually go. Like, did that throw anybody else for a loop? That you can just ride up to Dracula's castle? Like, It's not like it's an actual place. Like, does Dracula get mail?
I think if you guys seen Beetlejuice, I think that's where they go. There's a scene that takes place there at the very end.
I haven't seen the new one yet. No.
Okay. Well, speaking of the castle, I love the visage of they show it many, many times, that same matte painting that they just kind of like, okay, we're going to draw some snow on it for another, or change the lighting, whatever. But it's like, it's not a traditional, what we think of as a castle with like cylinders and whatnot. It's more like, it almost looks like a person just kind of hunched over.
Right.
Just like falling, like a castle just like falling over itself.
Yeah. A lot of great sets here, and just use of good imagery and good landscapes.
Speaking of good imagery, not to backtrack to the very beginning, but I'm shamelessly going to. Can we just really briefly talk about how Dracula is holding his dead wife, and this priest goes, "Oh yeah, she's damned to hell, man. She killed herself."
Yeah,
like, it's all over.
Thing he says there, like, "Oh, by the way, sir.
By the way, man, hey, I know that you just lost God knows how many men defending God in your country, but that girl, dude, she's screwed. She's not going anywhere."
Well, and that's the priest is also played by Anthony Hopkins. And my whole theory is that he is autistic in this movie. Every character he plays is autistic. Because there's that scene, and then there's another scene later in the movie where he's playing a completely different character, and he says that, "Oh, by the way, we need to cut off her head and stab her heart." Like, out of nowhere.
Did she suffer? Yes, she suffered greatly. So we stabbed her in the heart and cut off her head. Now she's fine.
That's my most excellent line.
He's not just playing all the characters, he's also playing them as autistic.
Right.
As a father of an autistic child, I like take that real fast.
You're like, I can say that. It's okay. You guys can't, but I'm gonna call it what it is.
I like that a typewriter is called a ridiculous machine. It's only like 30 years old at the time that this is taking place.
I like that Dracula doesn't apparently know what a goddamn train is. Like, he sails everywhere, not to jump 30 minutes into the movie, but he hops his decrepit old ass on a boat and goes. And I'm like, buddy, apparently there's a Trans-European Express.
Because he's got a lie in the dirt. It's more inconspicuous to be in the bottom of a ship.
Is it? You own a castle. Can't you just be like, hey man, I'll pay you 100,000 whatevers to not open this door on this train car?
I don't know, man, but he's held that castle for a long time. Taxes are probably adding up. He's not getting a lot of income coming in. He might just need to, cut some corners here and there.
That's true.
When we're talking about ridiculous things, let's not forget that there is supposedly a Christian convent within walking distance.
Yeah.
That like a person who has just flung themselves out of like the top of a castle into a river can reach.
Yeah.
I'd like to. We should probably catch the people up. So, long story short, Jonathan Harker gets captured by Dracula, seduced by Dracula's wives, and drained of his life essence. Later in the movie, after 3 other inane plots have been brought to our attention, Jonathan Harker randomly gains the strength to Rochambeau his way up a castle wall, slide into a freezing cold moat, tread water like a Navy SEAL, and then trek through the woods to this giant glowing cross convent with a bunch of like 5'0" hunched over nuns in it. And can you imagine his face? He walks in and he's like, guys, I've been captured by a spirit of great evil. And they're like, oh yeah, old Vladdy down the block. Yeah, dude, we know. You're our 8th case this year. Come on, like, let's go.
There's always that one guy on the block.
Agatha, get the vampire box.
How many people have they seen just Shawshank Redemption their ass out of Transylvania here?
I like Mother Superior's like, you don't impress me. The last person crawled through a sewer pipe.
There you go.
300 yards of shit.
Upon seeing Lucy's new fangs, Van Helsing says Nosferatu, which of course is the German film, and then it's never mentioned again.
Have we talked about Lucy at all?
No. Did we skip Lucy? Okay, so yeah, so back
we haven't done anything in England
Kyle,
yet.
This is why you can't throw me off, man, because I'm strolling past a bunch of stuff and I already missed it now.
It's okay. We can get there. So somehow Dracula on a boat gets to England. The boat wrecks. Nobody seems to care except there's this giant wolf that just runs down the beach. But it being England in the 1890s, people are like, oh, it's probably just the chemical runoff. Don't worry about it.
Well, they'll escape from the zoo.
Oh, sure. Yes, that's
which
right.
I'm sure happens all the time in England as well.
Oh, yeah. And there's a crazy guy talking nonsense in an asylum and nobody cares
Renfield.
Because, again, it's England in the 1890s.
Well, there's like an asylum full of these people. But this portion, I told you whenever do you remember like 2 years ago we sat down and I was like, hey, man, I have an idea. There's a portion of the novel that just is glossed over. It's the Demeter. I think I'm saying that right. Demeter.
Yeah. Are they making a movie about that?
They did. Apparently, it wasn't very good. I haven't seen it yet, but literally,
I saw it's one of the movies that makes a good trailer, but to watch like a whole movie of it, it was a bit much.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was talking to him. I sat down with him well before this movie came out, and I was like, "Hey, this would make a great story." I was like, "I'm going to start writing it." I started writing it. I never finished it, and then like a year later, I see the trailer for the movie, and I was like, ridiculous.
Supposedly that movie had been in like production hell for like 10 years.
Oh, really?
So what I'm hearing is you're just really good at taking other people's ideas.
It's not taking someone else's idea.
History according to Hollywood, a book or movie about the Demeter.
I'm not trying not to spoil or anything, but I would have given anything if Anthony Hopkins had showed up at the end of that movie.
But yeah, so we have an asylum full of crazy people who are all like talking about this dark lord who's gonna, I don't know, show up on the shores of England or whatever.
Again, shout out to production because they're the orderlies are wearing these like boxes on their heads and they'll get chewed up.
So they don't get like
so their jugular doesn't get ripped out of their neck.
So cool.
So Lucy has her 3 lovers, which is interesting because that's again in the novel, and this is one of the only movies that actually has all 3 of her like potential lovers in this. And so she decides to go with Arthur, which is Cary Elwes. Elwes? How do you say his last name?
Elwes.
Cary Elwes showed up, and I was like, everybody hide their tights. I was like, here we go.
Dr. Gordon, Wesley, come on.
So she decides he's the one for her. And then
the bad guy in Ella Enchanted. Come on, Dustin.
Right. And then right afterwards, Dracula in the form of a werewolf has relations with her in the middle of the night out in the open and then bites her. Right.
As one does. Again, it's England in the 1890s. Nothing we've described up to this point is out of the ordinary.
And it's kind of implied that Dracula has just been coming back night after night and just draining her of blood. So as soon as, is it Van Helsing that shows up and he's like, she needs a blood transfusion. And then blood types are not a thing back then. So of course it's okay and it works. And that's again also in the novel. We also have Dracula swooning Mina while Jonathan's making his long awaited escape. And I'm sorry, why is Gary Oldman looking so good in that freaking outfit? Like, I want to get, if that top hat was 6 inches shorter, dude, that's drip of the century right there. He's killing it, man.
Clearly nobody told Victorian women about stranger danger because like this is where Jack the Ripper is just like, rampaging through the streets of London, and she's like, yeah, this strange guy who's obsessed with me. Okay.
She rebuffs him a couple times. And then he just kind of like starts showing up like in different places. Like
determination, boys. It'll get you the girl for your vampiric desires every time.
Or the seduction of a vampire and some ungodly makes no sense script to follow. That would also help.
Okay, speaking of things that don't make sense, just for one second, since we're talking about Lucy a little bit, I don't understand how she turns into a vampire because she never drinks Dracula's blood.
Right.
But when Jonathan Harker shows up, Van Helsing asks, did you ever, because he was being chewed on by Dracula and the three brides, one of which is Monica Bellucci. And he says, as long as you didn't drink any blood, you're okay.
So, and again, referencing back to the novel, and it's been a while, but I'm pretty sure what it is they have to be bitten and then they have to die. And now they're undead and then they come back as a vampire. But that still does not make sense for why they have to drink the blood. So maybe it's you either die or drink the blood, or that's just a big plot hole.
But let's think about, I think it's a plot hole in the book, but I think Coppola at least thought about it a little bit, because let's think about how different Lucy behaves than Dracula's wives and how different she looks. So being Dracula, anybody he kills or anybody his group kills are going to become like wraiths, like vampire wraiths. But to become a fully in your faculties daywalker vampire, you have to drink his blood. Like that's the difference that I saw, because she's a reanimated corpse. She's not like him and his wives. She is dead by day, like up and moving by night.
Well, yeah, she's a fresh vampire.
Yeah.
But even before she dies, she's like getting teeth and like starting to bite people. Like that never happens to Jonathan.
She's trying to, yeah. True. Yeah. Jonathan's just immune.
The only if that's the way it is, the only thing I can think of is because he got married, like in that church, maybe that like cleansed him or something, reset him. I don't know.
Or they just dumped him in holy water when he got into the. There's also the implication that it's up to Dracula, because at the very end of the movie, not to spoil anything yet, he's like, I can't do this. And somehow that was just going to stop what had already occurred.
But then I wish I could tell.
Yeah, I wish I could tell our listeners that the movie makes more sense than this podcast, but sadly, we might be making more sense than watching the movie, and we've jumped plot directions 18 times.
I mean, really, to boil it down, though, this is more style over substance movie.
Yeah.
Where, again, a lot of this plot is just being thrown at the wall, but because everything in the production is just so good, like all the costumes and the sets and all the effects are just so interesting that, like, I don't really care.
So where were we? Lucy seduced by Dracula. Lucy gets blood transfusion. Lucy dies.
Lucy dies.
Okay.
Jonathan returns.
Van Helsing has appeared out of nowhere, because that's
Van Helsing has appeared and then teleports in one shot and one shot only, and then it's never mentioned again. Okay. He also says, like, I've waited for Dracula my entire life. Never mentioned again. Okay. We're on the same page. So
isn't that kind of how he is in the book, though? You're just like, who is this man and why does he help vampires? He's like, that is information you do not need to know.
I don't remember on that. So
or he's like a famed vampire hunter, but he's like those Finding Bigfoot people. If you haven't found a Bigfoot, they're crackpots. But if you have found a Bigfoot, they're probably your best friend. I feel like Van Helsing's the same type of thing.
Also, Anthony Hopkins playing Van Helsing cannot decide if he wants to overact or underact, because he just goes from one to the other, like in every other shot. Yeah. So this is when they have to kill Lucy, and it's Arthur, and this is when we get the hilarious expression that looks like many emotions, none of them being sorrow or horror, as Arthur drives the stake through his wife's heart. Mm-hmm. This is also when we get the, in my opinion, most excellent line. Dr. Seward says, an autopsy on Lucy? And Van Helsing replies, no, not exactly. I just want to cut off her head and take out her heart. and he delivers it just like that.
At her wake.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
In the open.
And we're shown how weak she is, because all it takes to bring vampire Lucy down, as she's trying to suck the life out of this child that she absconds with, is a cross and some words. And she vomits blood really briefly, like anybody does after a hard Friday night of party and kidnapping children, I guess.
And having sex with werewolves.
That too.
Yes.
Yeah, been there. And,
Oh, man.
and so she pushes her back into her crypt with the cross, stakes her, chops her head off. Bang, boom, bang. Drinks by midnight.
We're done.
Yeah.
We're moving on.
Easy peasy. This
That was
vampire
easy.
killing stuff it's simple.
And later Van Helsing kills the 3 brides with no trouble. They're all
No
like,
trouble at all. No.
not even like the third one's like, oh, maybe I should do something. It's
He just goes after.
I wonder if he like Jason Voorhees. I see that Jason lives behind you, so I wonder if he like Jason Voorhees just like decapitated all 3 at the same time. Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what happened in
With
that
all your
scene,
vi-
but
they put all their vampires in one coffin.
oh right, that's what they were. Yeah, so they were in different coffins. Yeah, they just didn't wake up. Come on, Lost Boys did. All right. Anyways, moving on. So can we take a moment before, because we're getting towards our finale here. So this is when Mina just falls for Dracula again.
And in the meantime, Jonathan has come back. We almost forgot that while all this is happening, Jonathan is back.
No, yeah, Jonathan's back. They're married now.
Yeah.
And Mina is like, I'm sorry, I love Dracula. and
while Lucy is, by the way, I mentioned this to my friend I was watching the movie with. While Lucy is dying, I'm like, how does nobody notice that Mina is just gone? That she's just disappeared. She's her best friend. Like you're on death's door with this random vampiric blood disease, and nobody's like, "Hey, anybody remember John's wife?"
No, apparently John didn't either.
I thought there's the whole scene where they're getting married. It's very Godfather-esque where they're getting married. I thought that's when she's in Romania marrying Jonathan, right when she dies.
Right at the death, but
I think so. But before she dies, while Lucy is ailing, she keeps disappearing to meet with Dracula.
Oh yeah, well she's
and
with
nobody
Dracula,
notices that she's just gone. Like she's just gone for
like,
hours of the
I
day.
gotta go. I'm getting a text from this guy.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Yeah, my Tinder gun went off.
Somebody sent me a telegram of an eggplant emoji, so I gotta
get out of here.
He keeps sending fang emojis.
Fang emoji. The passenger pigeon has told me it's time, so I gotta go.
And they're doing absence. They're doing absence together.
Getting drunk off of absence. Oh,
You might as well.
Yeah, true.
We have a little bit of a scene here. We see Dracula turn into a couple different things. So he turns into like this wolf creature. He turns into a bunch of rodents and rats. He also controls rodents, wolves, bats,
snakes.
He can crawl upside down. He can extend his limbs an extraordinary amount. Like he's pushing Superman levels here. Like I don't know there's much that Dracula can't do. Anyways, moving on here. So Van Helsing and his posse search for which box contains an undead booty boy because Dracula, after being turned away by Mina, is fleeing again. And then he just swoops in and takes Winona for a rider. So Mina confesses that despite his shortcomings and evil intentions, she is in love with him, willing to be his wife forever. And at this point, during this scene specifically, when Gary Oldman's sitting there and he's got his blouse open and Winona Ryder's just like looking at him so lustfully, I feel like Gary Oldman is giving a terrific performance and everyone else is acting at the level of a high school play. Like,
it's how most of this movie feels, honestly.
Yeah.
We can agree Gary Oldman stole the show acting wise here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think Renfield gives, the guy who plays Renfield,
recording artist Tom Waits.
Yes,
Really?
I think he tries. I think he gives a good go at being a crazy guy.
All right. Now we have Old Man Keanu, which definitely has the worst gray. Is it spray painted? It looks spray painted.
I think they just took some baby powder and just sprinkled it and ruffled up his hair a little bit.
It looks horrible.
It is
okay.
really bad.
We're gonna fast forward. We're gonna get to the end of this movie here. Having been bitten, Mina now is becoming a vampire herself. She can only be saved by Dracula being destroyed. While being hypnotized, she tells Van Helsing that Dracula is traveling via boat to Varna, then to Glatz, and then to Board Pass Road. So she is now near full vamp, and she attempts to seduce Van Helsing, but it doesn't. No, it works immediately. What the hell? This is the moment I was telling Kyle about. Van Helsing, she literally is like, come to me. And he's like, okay. And just kisses her. What? What?
I said it's because he's been in her presence for like days and days and days, and that the closer they get physically to Dracula, the stronger she's going to become. And in my word, not that this was thought out at all, because I guarantee you it was not. But in one of those like headcanon things to make the movie make sense, it's like when you make Highlander make sense in your head because it doesn't make sense as a movie. Yeah. To me, he's the only reason she's not full vamp yet because he keeps resetting her. It just lasts for shorter and shorter periods. So he's exposed to her all the time. She gets stronger the closer they get to Dracula, and he's got to be exhausted. He's on like, midnight frosty vigil with Dracula's wives trying to kill him. So
Yes.
my theory is that the vampiric energy is so like overwhelmingly strong that for an instant he breaks, but then as soon as he faces who Mina has like what Mina has become after he kisses her, he reverts back. He's like, oh crap. No, thank you.
All right, what do you think, Jason? Be the tiebreaker here. What do you think?
That seems a little icky. You got
Oh,
this,
come
like,
on, Jason. Oh, come on, man.
however old he is, he's like, he's like shoving his face in her. He's like motorboating her.
Yeah, the kisses in this movie are all so weird.
There are no
Well,
pecs.
then a minute
There are no
later, like
pecs.
one of the writer like kisses Dracula with like the like really gross icky makeup.
Yeah.
You're like, ugh.
Exactly.
I think the most brutal moment of this movie, it's just a shadow, but the gypsy ladies or his wives stabbing the horse to death.
Yeah, eating the
Yeah.
horse.
My goodness, that came out of nowhere. Not to worry though, like we said, Van Helsing decapitates or kills all three of them after the morning sun rises. So here we are. As the posse chase down Dracula's carriage, racing against the sunset, Mina produces blue fire circles to slow them down. Again,
She like does incantations. She just starts going like a metal concert. It's awesome.
Dude, she's like Azula from Last
Yes.
Airbender. She just starts throwing blue fire.
So inside the gates of the castle, just as the sun sets, Jonathan and Arthur nearly kill Dracula. Except they don't because our work here is done, but hers has just begun.
Also, the Texan dude who
referring
is
to
never
Mina.
named gets ganked.
Quincy.
Yeah, who is like completely superfluous for this entire movie. He never fights. He never does anything productive. He carries a Bowie knife. He makes like two funny lines, and he gets shot through the guts, right? Or stabbed.
He
Again,
gets stabbed.
yes.
Stabbed, yeah.
That's from the
He's just
novel.
a big talking Texan.
By these Dracula servants who apparently can't fight. Like apparently, like, undead
Hired hands,
Satan
man.
servant guy like has these guards who are useless because two namby-pambies, an old guy and a Texan just ride over him like they're no big deal.
Yeah, something they're like the Avengers.
Yeah.
Anyone want to explain why Mina has to be the one to do this? Why they have this little moment
Symmetry.
at the end?
My
think-
theory is that she actually is the reincarnated soul of his wife.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, that's
Like-
my theory is that he's
Yeah.
actually not lying to her, that she legitimately is the reincarnated
And like
version of his wife.
Yeah, and her compassion brings him back to a mortal form, and
And her
God,
forgiveness.
this movie is so unsubtle in like everything it does. Like because like there's a painting on the ceiling
Mhm.
of Vlad holding his wife, and they hold on that for so long. Like, do you get it? Do you get it? Are you sure? Are you sure? You see what we're doing here? We're flipping around. It's like the circle is complete. Like time is like a flat circle. Do you get it? Do you get it? It just keeps going
I like
and
how
going.
it's a 2.5-hour movie for a 5-minute fight scene at the very end. Also,
Yeah.
not to be that guy, I like how we beat the carriage to where it was going, and somehow we can't effectively ambush a carriage, so we just end up chasing it anyway.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, it was close. It was a close
is
race.
Yeah, but anyway, I think it's interesting that the book doesn't have like a redeeming quality for Dracula, and the movie
Right.
felt like it needed to, because I think the power, even though it's a slow book, the power of the Book of Dracula is this dude's just evil. Like they don't fight him for any other reason than he's evil and he kills people, and like that's it. That's it. That's the only reason. But then in the movie they're like, no. The servant of Satan who's killed people for 500 years can't be purely evil. There has to be some way to redeem his soul.
I'm okay with them trying to give a little nuance to it, but
Mhm.
again, they hit you on the head with it so flipping hard. Like all those scenes in the middle of them like going on dates and like
Yeah.
I don't need that. We get it. We get it. Trust your audience.
I kind of just wish they wouldn't flip flop Mina back and forth. Like she either should have like never married Jonathan and realized how like dark and evil Dracula really is, or she should have, once she realized Jonathan was still alive, she should have been like, actually trying to actively stay away from Dracula, and he just keeps pursuing her.
Or
I don't know.
Or it's Stockholm
that's
syndrome, because I think the silly thing is like they don't need Mina to take him to the castle. Jonathan was imprisoned there for a month. So hear me out. Dracula, after the fight scene where they try to kill him, instead of somehow successfully seducing this woman who's actually very impressively resisted him for like the longest time, he freaking steals her because he's evil,
right?
And he takes her to his castle where he wages like psychological warfare on her until she breaks, and they arrive too late. Like, if you want to do it that way, or in the castle away from everybody, I don't know, somehow she sees like his past or whatever, I don't care, but like separate her from things that should cause her to not want this undead serial killer.
That's what I'm saying.
To do that, like,
all right, I really want a 5-minute long sequel that's just Mina returning to Jonathan afterwards, like hey,
he dies, and she just immediately stops caring, and she's like, oh no, what have I done?
She just, you remember how this guy held you hostage for a month and then tried to kill me, and I still chose him over you? Are we still married?
Hey boy, you up?
Technically, they got married for real, so
right,
because they actually went through with the ceremony.
That's his wife.
I mean, again, he's a lawyer, so be like, wait, so if you're, did you just inherit all of Dracula's property? Like, we can flip this shit.
We're rich.
It is I will say that part of it though is it feels like the actors understood all of the underlying like sexual tones in the book, and the director did not. It's kind of what, because the actors, having read the book and being actors, because the book legitimately has been analyzed for being like an under the radar, like Victorian, this is what sex and sexual relationships were like in this era book, because there's a pretty convincing theory that Bram Stoker was homosexual, which is neither here nor there, except like it's the men are submissive and the women are Dracula's wives. And when women are corrupted, they're literally corrupted. So it's like it has a lot of commentary on Victorian society and the proper roles, and how if the proper roles are thrown away, then chaos ensues. It's arguable that if he was homosexual, he was making fun of Victorian society and nobody understood. That's what he was doing.
Well,
but the actors seem to get that, and then like the direction of the movie obviously does not. Like,
well, there's like that random scene where it starts to rain, and the Mina and Lucy are running through the garden, and then they're like they start kissing each other. You're like, what is happening? And then they're reading Arabian Nights together, looking at like the naughty pictures.
Yeah,
right.
and that's my point, is that like in the book and scenes taken from the book, that's always there. Like there is always some sort of, they shouldn't be behaving this way, and that's not as obvious to audiences now, but like, believe me, if you were from Victorian England in 1897 and you were reading Dracula, you'd be like, these hussies. No wonder they got corrupted. Like, my God.
And what do you think the three suitors and Jonathan were doing on the train all that time?
Playing Rochambeau, obviously.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. I watched a stage version of this movie book that is based off of both. And it was a community theater thing, so the acting wasn't great, but the show itself
about the same.
Well, yeah. Sadly, it wasn't a whole lot worse. But the plot is way better, because it's now that the movie exists, it's a synthesis of the book and the movie, and it was like this really seamlessly, almost in terms of like ABC plot event, it was like perfect. You're like, okay, I understand. Like, this is why we're doing this. So.
You could easily cut out like a good 30 minutes and you'd have a really tight movie. A really good movie.
You could honestly, you could remake this movie and just rely less on star power and more on who fits the roles and revamp it, and it would probably be really good.
Revamp.
Just
50 Shades of Drac.
It's just so much. There's so much visual stuff happening. It's one of those like, they were too busy figuring out whether they could. They didn't stop to think if they should.
Right. Right.
It's like the dark scenes in all 90s movies where you're like, I don't know how to tell you this, but your Dark Knight filming was not any better than it was in 1985. But in 1985, I can see the people at night because you use the light.
Well, I will say the cinematography in this movie, I loved. I loved
Yes.
all of the art direction, even the parts that don't make sense, even the little Evil Dead ripoff, oh shoot, now I'm thinking dolly shots. The
Mhm.
dolly shots that are like really quickly, like supposed to be like a creature following them, things like that. I
Yeah,
thought it
they,
looked
like
great. Even good use of 90s CGI sucked, and actually good use of it here.
well, no, there's no it's not CGI.
Well, I mean, not CGI as in like, and maybe that's not the right word. Like the blue flames being like right over top of the. It
Okay,
looks like
yeah.
it's drawn on the film itself, or
Mhm.
like the transitions where the sky changes really fast and it's like just kind of sped up. It doesn't look like real, but it's not supposed to. Or the use of the puppets in the beginning. So I shouldn't
Right.
say CGI. I should just say like the effects,
The optical
that they did.
effects.
Yes, that they did for this
Yeah.
movie.
And that's my whole thing about CGI. Like when most CGI, you know it's fake, so you know there's nothing there. But even a
Right.
practical effect that's not convincing, you know there's something physically there that's representing what's in the story. So I think your
Right.
brain holds more weight to something that might not look realistic, but at least it's physical, than something you know is completely fabricated.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I love miniature work. And there's so many great little miniatures like the train tracks and everything and all the sets with the matte paintings. I'm just a sucker for that shit.
And some of the sets are terrifying. Like the costuming, as the historian, the costuming's good. The weapons are good. The hairstyles, other than Keanue Reeves, are actually all pretty good.
Nothing on Dracula's double bun hairstyle
I
when he's
love
like
it.
first
Yeah,
old.
I don't know about that. As far as aesthetically, I refuse to acknowledge that old Dracula exists in this movie. Like Dracula does not appear in this movie until Gary Oldman with his long flowing locks shows up. I don't know who grandfather anti-time was, but
This is the time. Actually, I want to do a quick shout out. There's a guy who is a huge collector of props and trinkets from the movie. And he has a whole room he's called it the Crimson Room. And I did a video interview where you give me like a video tour. It's on my YouTube.
Wow.
You can also find them on Instagram, the Bram Stoker's Dracula _ Crimson Room. And he's got he has a whole room just full of stuff from the movie. It's very
Specifically
cool.
props from this movie.
Yes.
Not even like Dracula in general.
No, yeah, that's what I
Wow,
love when
that's
someone is
cool.
hyper focused on a very, very specific thing. I kind of like just to see how far they'll go. And yeah, he is very, very dedicated. I kind of love it.
Awesome. That's awesome. All right, this is a perfect time. Do you, Kyle? And I don't know if we got one for you, Jason. Do you have a most excellent line?
oh man, yeah. My most excellent line is they're sitting in the pub after they've put Lucy the vampire down, and Mina goes, "Well, did she suffer?" And Van Helsing goes, "Yes, of course she suffered, but I stabbed her in the heart and cut her head off." And then he just goes back to eating.
Yes.
Gary Oldman said his favorite line was, "I have crossed oceans of time to be with you."
That's a badass line.
It was a badass line. Dracula's got a lot of badass lines.
I'm telling you, man, this is a great portrayal of Dracula. Movie, and hit and miss, but they nailed Dracula.
What about you, Jason? Did you pick out a line?
I was looking through some of them, and the traveling through time one was really good. Yeah. I'm going to switch to when Van Helsing is giving his lecture and talking about syphilis.
Oh, yeah.
And he talks about civilization and civilization have advanced together.
I loved that line. I laughed so hard.
It's so bad.
Ironically, though, I think one thing that maybe it doesn't necessarily hit with modern audiences, but one thing I think the movie does well is it does seem to understand the subtext in the book about Victorian fears of disease. Because 1897 is this really weird era where there is medicine and it does work, but to a very, very finite line. And so they exist in this almost scarier than before, because before medicine is we can remove limbs, we can do basic surgery, we still can't fight bacteria or germs or anything.
But yeah, they don't know. Yeah.
And in 1897, they still really can't, but they're doing more and more surgeries, and they can do more and more crazy things. Like by the time of World War I, they are making prosthetic faces. They don't move, but like that's the level that we're rapidly approaching. But they are still terrified of germs and disease, because until penicillin is a thing, there's nothing you can do once germs and bacteria set in. And so this idea of this malignant, like death-giving thing that seeps into your blood is so incredibly Victorian and scary. Like it's ooky spooky enough for us, but when you live in a world without antibiotics and antivirals, and the one thing that will always kill you is a blood infection or an infection of your body almost every time, that is scary as crap. So the idea that a guy can give it to you is also scary as crap.
Well, when is the Black Plague again?
Well, it's the 1300s, but plague, the thing about the late 1800s is you still have tuberculosis. You still have some smallpox once in a while. Spanish flu's in 1919, and it kills, 10 million people, 15 million people. But that's the thing, is that epidemics are almost a thing of the past in Victorian England, but they're still there because poor people still get sick all the time. And when you're the rich high society, you are one unfortunate encounter away from all these icky things that you do not want to touch.
I just want to do a tally of all the roles that what's his name? Van Helsing.
Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins has. So he is the priest, he's the narrator, he's also the captain of the Demeter.
Jesus
why?
Christ. This is like Michael Caine in Jaws: The Revenge. It's like, what are you doing, man?
It's like we're getting our money's worth for that Oscar you won.
Yeah,
no kidding.
I think the thing is, he does the worst in his biggest role. I think he's good as the priest. I think he's good as the captain. I think he's great as the narrator. I think he's a solid B- as Van Helsing.
So we've got we do about 30 seconds apiece. This is our biggest dope, biggest nope. This is something we do. It's just timed. We usually between the two of us is a minute, but we'll do a minute and a half if we need it.
Unless Dustin takes 40 seconds.
I don't.
Dude,
mine's gonna be like 10 seconds, man. I'm prepared this time. I'm coming prepared for season 3, man. This is different. I am a new man.
I'm built different. I'm not like these regular bitches out here.
So we'll go first, and then Jason, if you want to finish us up, and biggest dope, biggest nope. You ready?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. All right, biggest dope. It's easy. It's Gary Oldman's entire drip when he's young Dracula in London. And the biggest nope, also easy. Keanue Reeves' gray hair. That looks horrible. Close second would be his accent. All right, you, Kyle.
All right, biggest dope, I think, is actually Dracula's scene at the very beginning when he's raging against God and the church and society, and just the sheer level of like righteous, unhinged anger that Gary Oldman produces makes it so believable. You're like, yeah, that guy, okay. Biggest nope. Oh, there's so many. I have so many nopes with this movie. Okay, I think the biggest nope is the entire like puppet theater scene. Not the puppets themselves, but just everything, the wolf and the chasing and the like, because what the hell is happening? Is that, that's my biggest nope. And then he just appears and he has the wolf, and I can't. Jason, you're up, man.
Yeah. My biggest dope is obviously, I think, is Gary Oldman's acting, and just again how committed he is and being in all these different forms and all this makeup and everything. He's just killing it. And then again, the effects in the production, like all the costumes, the scene, the sets, and all the like the visual trickery is just, again, it just makes this movie so watchable. Like it just throw it on. It's just like eye candy. But again, most of the other acting, we didn't even talk about Richard E. Grant is the doctor in this.
Oh yeah, Dr. Seward.
Yeah, and he's like one of those people that I never really think of as a young person. He always just seems like the old grumpy Richard E. Grant. So I was completely shocked when I realized I was the same person this time around. But yeah, most of the acting and a lot of the plot is just really all over the place. Again, if this was just a mundanely shot and produced movie, it'd be awful. It'd be unwatchable. But because everything around that terrible is so good, it makes it watchable, like very watchable.
It's Red Dawn for vampires, man. You're like, okay, I can make this work.
All right, do you guys have a number rating, 0 to 10? What would you say? I really want to go with the 6.9. You know what? It's appropriate. I'm gonna go with the 6.9 on this
Nice.
because you watch this movie. It's a fair rating, and also just because this has to be one of the horniest movies I've ever seen. So
Yes.
6.9 for me.
Oh man. Okay. I'm not even going to try to give this a history rating. This was just a shameless horror movie plug that we
just a
pretended
horror
I had to
movie.
roll in. I will give Vlad the Impaler a 10 out of 10 for being a sadistic, sociopathic, crazy guy, though. Like,
There you go.
you want somebody defending your country from 10 times your numbers, you want Vlad the Impaler. Call 888 impale your butt today. Rating for the movie? Oh man. God help me. Probably I would just give it a flat 6.
Okay.
Because if I'm in the right mood, it's an 8. And if I'm not in that mood, it's a 4. And the average of those two numbers is 6.
There you go. That's good.
I'm going with an 8. I'm going because I'm always in the mood for bonkers movies.
I like
Again, it's a movie that's entertaining, and it's not good. I would say it's good. It's just extremely entertaining. And also I always kind of lump this together with Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
Which is I think is also kind of a beautiful disaster in its own way, but this one I find is much more entertaining.
Yeah.
Which is ironic. I think Interview with the Vampire is probably a better movie, but it's less fun to watch. Like,
yes.
Yeah, like
yeah,
it's just objectively it's better, but it's worse. Like I don't like it as much.
Well, it's just they spend so much time. Oh, I'm a vampire. This is so terrible.
I'm so
blah,
depressed,
blah, blah.
and Tom
Yeah.
Cruise is so oddly effeminate and yet crazy and evil. And what is happening? And then Kirsten Dunst appears, and oh, ashes. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the movie. If you haven't seen it, there you go.
Well, spoiler alert, I haven't finished it. I've never been able to finish it. I've tried to finish it twice, and I just get so board. I'm
If
like,
you
okay,
could finish Wings, you can finish Interview
Wings
with the
is a
Vampire.
masterpiece. Don't
Wings
put
has
Interview with the
same
Vampire.
15-minute audio track for
You
2
watch
hours
it
and
on
40
mute.
minutes.
Watch it on mute. Play your own music. The music was not included in the movie. The music is added later on.
Oh,
Anyways,
one
moving
thing we forgot to talk about: the score in this is amazing.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
And they
And again,
take,
that
like,
goes a long way to make a movie watchable.
they take like the original score and make it brighter, bigger, and better. Like it's more epic. Whenever the title card comes up, I am like, I am here. I am in for this movie. And then it kind of, goes up and down from there. But
No, this is on my Halloween's like spooky mood soundtrack list on a playlist on Spotify.
there you go.
That's
There
a
you
great
go.
point because let's be real, Star Wars, even the originals, not nearly as good without John Williams, man. Like
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's just how it is.
All right, Jason, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you,
where
man.
can everyone find you and the Dads from the Crypt pod?
Yeah, so I mean, really, just look for Dads from the Crypt on pretty much every platform, except for Twitter, which I don't really use much anymore. It's Crypt Dads, but everywhere else is Dads from the Crypt. We're on Instagram, is where I post most of my stuff. We're on Threads. We have a fun little TikTok going on, Dads from the Crypt Talk.
There you go.
You can find the podcast on all the podcasting platforms. We also do YouTube as well. If you want to watch dads talk about movies, we're all bearded, glasses wearing dads. So if you're into that, if that's your kink, go for it. But like I said, we've reviewed every Tales from the Crypt episode and the 3 movies technically. And we've interviewed directors, actors, producers, tons of people that worked on the show. And then we did Creep Show. We did some Black Mirror. We've done some Creep Show, the TV series, and some of the movies. We have been doing staff picks for a little while, and somehow we started doing Sam Neill movies for the last month.
I saw that the Event Horizon was your newest episode, right?
Right, yeah. So, we as a comfort movie, we wanted to do In the Mouth of Madness.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, let's just keep going with the Sam Neill theme. So we did Event Horizon, one of my personal favorites.
Same here.
Again, another beautiful disaster of a movie. And then I don't know when this is coming out, but our next week is going to be Dead Calm with Billy Zane, Nicole Kidman.
There you
Another very horny movie.
go.
Which is funny because Billy Zane is not what I would consider like a horny actor, Like it's not.
No, I think he is. I think he's like Okay, watch this and I mean, not Titanic,
Right.
but watch Dead Calm and watch Demon Knight, the Tales from the Crypt movie. And he's got a lot going on there.
Okay,
There we go.
I see you, Billy.
And we got a ton of stuff planned for October is our big month, so we're always got fun stuff going on.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on to the episode. Thanks everybody for listening.
Unless you've tuned out at this point, in which, can we blame you?
Kyle, you're always putting our podcast down. You got to hype it up, Kyle. Hype it up.
Hype it up. Okay. Woo! There you go.
Thank you. Thank you for a woo. We
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Jason. And everybody else, we will be back next week.